Closed captioning of this program is made possible by the Fireman's Fund Foundation.
Tonight, Governor Schwarzenegger gives up his plan to swear in a new lieutenant governor and resubmit Senator Abel Maldonado's nomination for the position. Lawmakers from Sacramento to Washington, D.C. called for investigations into why Anthem Blue Cross is raising rates as much as 39% for some of its customers. Silicon Valley is in a struggle to maintain its innovative leadership, according to a study released this week. And a neighborhood in transition breaking ground for the long-awaited Central Subway into San Francisco's Chinatown. Coming up next. Hello, I'm Belva Davis, and welcome to This Week in Northern California. Joining me on our news panel, Victoria Colliver, staff writer with the San Francisco Chronicle on healthcare premiums going up, and Rachel Gordon, staff writer also with the San Francisco Chronicle on the Central Subway. Josh Richmond, legal and political affairs reporter with the Oakland Tribune on the battle over the confirmation of the lieutenant governor. And Juan Ha, reporter for KQED Public Radio, joining us from San Jose on the outlook for Silicon Valley. Josh Richmond, your story seems to change by the hour. What are the current conditions? Where are we?
The current conditions are we're right back at square one. Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger this afternoon hit the reset button on this entire nomination and confirmation process by withdrawing Senator Abel Maldonado from nomination as lieutenant governor, and then immediately renominating him, thereby resetting the 90-day clock in which the legislature can confirm him. This all came about because the state Senate had voted to confirm him this week, but the Assembly last night voted 37 to 35 in favor of confirmation, which meant there was no majority. The Assembly took that to mean that he had been rejected. The governor took it to mean they hadn't either rejected or confirmed him by a majority, and so he could just be sworn in later this month. A great argument ensued and threatened to ensue for months and go to court. And so the governor says that the reason he withdrew and renominated is to avoid what was likely to be a costly and lengthy lawsuit. Assembly Democrats say he didn't have a legal leg to stand on. That argument obviously is not going to play out now. But the long and short of it is, now we get to go through another confirmation process.
Josh, what's this fight about? Is it about Maldonado, or is it about a governor's appointment, no matter who it's going to be? Is this guy really, does he split people that much?
This is kind of a fight about a governor that very few people like, nominating a guy that not terribly many people like, and then the legislature that nobody likes fighting over it. You know, the governor has a 30% approval rating, the legislature has a 16% approval rating, and this isn't going to help either one of them. Maldonado is sort of a lightning rod because he's been the guy who's been willing to cross the aisle and vote with Democrats on budget and tax bills in exchange for political goals of his own. And so conservative Republicans have a problem with him, but held their nose and backed him. Progressive Democrats don't like him, but were willing to vote for him in some cases, if only to get him out of the state Senate so that they can try to take his state Senate seat, which they see as being more important than the lieutenant governor's office.
And add to that, were he to assume this job, he would be the highest ranked Latino in politics in the state.
He would indeed, and he would get to, were he confirmed, he'd get to go into the June primary for this very office with that all-important little I next to his name, the incumbent sign, which he'd like to do. He says he's going to run for this office whether he's confirmed or not. So now what we get to look forward to is several months of him both trying to convince the public and the legislature that he should be confirmed, while simultaneously, I assume, he's going to be getting on the ballot and campaigning for that office in the June primary. He is opposed in the June primary by State Senator Sam Amistad, generally seen as a more conservative candidate from Grass Valley.
So is the state going to fall apart without the lieutenant governor's seat filled? I mean, should we care about this office?
We've been okay since John Garamendi left for Congress several months ago.
Kind of okay.
Kind of, yeah. So we're just holding on. You know, people like to say that the lieutenant governor doesn't actually do anything. That's not really true. He or she sits on the CSU Board of Trustees, the UC Board of Regents, the State Lands Commission, and more importantly, the lieutenant governor makes appointments to a lot of executive and regulatory agencies. And that's an impact that can last well beyond the lieutenant governor's own tenure. So there is some importance to the office. And of course, he takes over if the governor is incapacitated for some way. Governor Schwarzenegger seems relatively healthy, and we're having elections for both of these offices in November. So the stakes, you know, as a professor friend of mine likes to say about campus battles in academia, the battle is so fierce because the stakes are so small.
Well, then we return to the head of the Democratic Party,
Yes.
the fiery John Burton.
The fiery.
Do you think that Mr. Burton had any influence in how the vote went?
Certainly John Burton did not want to see this man confirmed and has said so earlier this week, and the state Senate basically ignored him. But he proclaimed victory last night after there was a failure to confirm. And today, after this withdrawal and renomination, he says, you know, this is just a waste of our time, et cetera, et cetera. I talked to the governor's press secretary late this afternoon. He was in Vancouver with the governor up at the Olympics, and he said basically that, you know, they're doing this to save money and time. And I said, well, couldn't you have done that by nominating somebody else? And he said, no. He said, we won. We won last night. We just don't want to, you know, spend the time and the money to litigate it. So we're going to give them a chance, give the assembly a chance to make right on this and confirm him.
How long can he do this, and when is the next time that there would be a vote?
Theoretically speaking, he could do it till November, until somebody gets elected to fill the job. And theoretically, the assembly could have re-voted on this anyway, because the governor would not be able to swear him in, Maldonado, even under the governor's interpretation of the Constitution, until after February 21, or the 90 days since the nomination had told. The problem is there were several Assembly Democrats who did not vote yesterday. And so I assume there's some arm twisting and head knocking going on to try to bring them into line to see if there could be a revote that would be more advantageous to the assembly.
Looking at the seat, the people are kind of eyeing it. Jackie Spear, who's a congresswoman from the Bay Area, was looking at that seat, decided no, she's going to run for Congress. Now we're talking about Gavin Newsom, who's going to be termed out of the mayor's office in San Francisco. He's considering a run for the lieutenant governor's post. I mean, is it a magnet for people who just need somewhere else to go, or?
I don't think the people who are running for it would say so.
Will this be a good race coming up in this year?
It could be an interesting race. You know, Jackie Spear was actually thinking of Attorney General. But yes, Gavin Newsom was thinking of jumping into the race. There are already two Democrats vying in the race. Dean Flores, state senator, and Janice Hahn from Los Angeles City Council. So that's shaping up to be lively. And, you know, it's a statewide constitutional office. It's nothing to sneeze at. So
your story is filled with uncertainty, and so is Vicki's story here, filled with uncertainty to the degree. But we do know one thing, that there was a request by Anthem Blue Cross to raise their rates.
Well, they actually sent letters out to their members telling them that their rates will go up X amount of percent. We don't know exactly how much, but generally I started hearing last week that rates were going up 35, 39%, a fair amount. And these are people who are individual consumers. They buy their insurance as a person rather than having their employer sponsor that or a group sponsor that. And because of that, they're a particularly vulnerable group.
So where do we stand? They've said they want to raise the rates. Everybody from Washington to Sacramento and beyond are acting as though this is a very unusual thing.
It's not unusual. Last year, they raised rates basically the same amount for a lot of consumers. I have heard from some of the same people last year that they had a 30% rate. Now they have a 30-something% rate. The difference is that we've had a conversation about health care reform now for over a year. The president has picked this up as an issue to revive that discussion. We also have continuing to have a poor economy. We have people losing their jobs. We have more and more people actually going into this individual market or feeling shaky about their health care. And so that's why it's just risen to the level. But once again, it's been a problem specifically in this market for a while.
So basically, they've now made themselves a poster child for healthcare.
Yeah, and they couldn't pick a worse time to do so. I mean, I still am a little mystified. They say they need to raise these rates. They've had increased medical costs. They've also had a shrinking pool of people they deem as healthy, meaning that the people who actually buy this insurance and are responsible enough to have it may need it, or so they're worried about that. They have a whole host of excuses, but right now a lot of people in high offices aren't really buying it.
So Victoria, where do these people go? I mean, do we have any idea of how many people are actually going to drop out of this insurance market because they can't afford the higher rates? And if they do have to drop out, is there any backup plan for them?
Not really. A lot of people have been saying to me, well, I have a health problem. I cannot do without health insurance. What do I do? What the company is often offering them is actually to raise their deductible, to change their plan so they were actually spending more money out of the pocket, but at least they're covered and they can keep their rates a little under control. Going uninsured for some people is just not an option. And these are people who, many of them may have had employer-based coverage and they either lost their jobs or were cut back and somehow have to make do during a period of time without group coverage.
And I think we're likely to see more Americans, certainly more Californians, going to this route where they're going to have to buy individual policies. I mean, certainly here in Silicon Valley, most of the mid-wage jobs that are coming back are temporary contract jobs that don't give them employer health insurance. And now with the jobs bill making its way through Congress, that's supposed to help small businesses with job creation. But as we all know, small businesses are often less likely to offer health insurance. So I wonder if you see, I wonder if you see this trend magnifying. I mean, won't we see other health insurers going down this route?
We have actually. We've already seen some other health insurers have similar rate hikes. That's exactly true. We've also, over a trend of a number of years, we have fewer and fewer people covered through their employers. So they're out there in this, what I consider a wild, wild west market. There are virtually no controls over this market. The Department of Insurance or the Department of Managed Healthcare, they don't tell these insurers how much they can raise their rates by. It's truly they can do that whenever and how much they want, which has opened up a whole different discussion over rate regulation.
Well, some people have said that the whole healthcare battle is really about insurance coverage and not about some of the other things that have taken center stage. Do you think the insurance industry feels that way?
Well, definitely on the national scene, it's not really health reform, it's really health insurance reform. Mm-hmm. There's been a big discussion over everything from getting insurers not to reject people based on pre-existing conditions, but they only want to do that if they can get everyone under the umbrella, meaning having a mandate saying you have to have insurance. It's just been a real battle on every front. There's a lot of dollars and a lot of powerful, basically a lot of powerful insurance money involved in this.
So where are we now? What's next?
What's next? It's hard to say. There's a couple hearings coming up in this month. We have Assemblymember Dave Jones has called for a state hearing. We have a national hearing back in Washington, D.C., also around February 24th or 5th. Basically, a lot of people are looking at this issue and trying to see what to do. The question is, will they actually do something?
Okay, well, down in Silicon Valley, as Juan has said, this is an issue of concern because there's a struggle going on there. There were, Juan, some unexpected findings today in a report presented at the State of the Valley Conference in San Jose. Now, healthcare may not have been one of them, but is it widely believed that Silicon Valley is at risk of losing its innovative edge?
Well, Belva, this is an annual report card for Silicon Valley. And you're right. I mean, there were a lot of anxiety at this conference that I went to. And what the numbers show is that Silicon Valley is not immune to the Great Recession. There have been massive job losses, 90,000 in less than 2 years. And on top of that, I think what's really troubling a lot of business leaders is that they're looking under the hood of this innovation engine that's really key to Silicon Valley's success so far. And they're saying, hey, things look like they're breaking down. So for example, what they're saying is, foreign talent, you know, the influx of immigrants that Silicon Valley is dependent on, very highly skilled, very, very talented. Their numbers have been on the decline since 2005. At the same time that you're not seeing a lot of homegrown students graduate with engineering and science degrees. And we're also seeing, of course, venture capital, which is really the mother's milk for a lot of these startups that we hear and read about. That has also dwindled, I mean, really decreased significantly. And at the same time, you know, Silicon Valley isn't attracting the government funding and investments that it really needs to develop the next wave of technologies. So there's a lot of concern.
What do you think happened? I know that a lot of, when we talk about people coming in and being important to the progress down there, we're from India and from China, countries that are growing rapidly and doing well. Is that what's happening? More competition?
More competition, and you know, a lot of that is, of course, after 9/11, immigration regulations have really tightened, and the Silicon Valley has always been an advocate for more of these H-1B visas, which are these highly skilled immigrant visas. And what's happening is, you know, as immigration rules tighten, as H-1B visas are tightened as well, a lot of these immigrants are choosing to stay in their home countries, or what happens is they come here, we pay for their educations, they get these great degrees, and then they leave the country. I hear a lot of cases where people go up to Canada or, you know, go to England, for example. And right now, because Asia is doing a lot better in terms of rebounding from this recession, we're seeing a lot of immigrants go back to their home countries, go back to India, go back to China to pursue jobs in these tech hubs that are emerging there.
Well, what is Silicon Valley doing to retool? I can't imagine they're just kind of rolling up the rug and going away. They're probably looking for something new to do.
Oh, definitely. And, you know, the Silicon Valley, I mean, still has a lot of good things going for it, right? You still have this great immigration population. I mean, you know, it's dwindling, but it's still there. And you also have great schools, you know, Stanford and Berkeley, which continue to churn out a lot of innovations, a lot of good startups. So no one's really saying it's going away. There's also you know, the great next promise really of innovation is really in the clean energy sector. You're seeing a lot of venture capital investments there. And, you know, I think Silicon Valley leaders are hoping that if they can continue, or at least if they can grow the federal investments in clean energy, that really could produce the next wave of job creation for them. So it's really, you know, it's really what can Silicon Valley do now? And
Juan, along those lines, you and I just last week were with Senator Boxer at Solyndra, the solar panel producer in Fremont. Is there a sense that the Recovery Act funding, the kind of thing, the loan guarantee that Solyndra got, is there more of that? Or is there hope for more of that? Or are there other signs that actions that the government has tried to take are helping in any way? Or
yeah, you know, what's interesting is that in the when the stimulus money came out, Silicon Valley actually didn't get a whole lot of that money for clean energy, which was really surprising. And I think it's disturbing actually for a lot of these business leaders. So it was really interesting at this conference, the sponsor of the conference, they're actually saying that they are creating a position at Joint Venture Silicon Valley just to look at federal funding and investments to go after some of these money, you know, funds that are out there and trying to get that money for Silicon Valley.
Who were some of the speakers today? I mean, it was a conference filled with leaders in the industry, so.
Yeah, leaders from the industry, and it was really interesting because we also had a very lively debate with Bill Lockyer and Tom Campbell, as well as Steve Poizner. So it was a really interesting discussion, and that discussion, you know, really was about where is California headed.
Mm-hmm. All right, we're talking about community leadership, the Valley trying to get its own act together and to resurrect the spark that it had going for a long time. And that brings me to Rachel Gordon's story, because there was a groundbreaking for a $1 billion plus project in San Francisco's Chinatown about project that's been underway for years.
Right.
Background.
Belva, this was not the sexiest groundbreaking. In fact, it was to relocate some utilities. I mean, it's not something that you usually go like, wow, and pop the champagne cork. But it really was marking the construction start of the Central Subway. That's a project that's been around for a long time. In fact, we could go all the way back to 1989 with the Loma Prieta earthquake. And if you remember that earthquake, we used to have a freeway running along San Francisco's waterfront, the Embarcadero Freeway. That was demolished after it was seismically challenged, let's say. And the people in Chinatown freaked out, the merchants in particular, saying, you are choking off a lifeline to our neighborhood to get people in here. So they came up with another plan, and one of those plans was to bring in a light rail line, the subway. San Francisco already has the subway system, bring it right into Chinatown. Eventually, it might go out towards Fisherman's Wharf and North Beach and really kind of get more of that transit, underground subway transit access into other parts, the northeast part of the city.
The earthquake was in 1989.
Right.
This is a few years have passed.
Right. So what happened? I mean, this is not just a, reach into your pocket and pay for this project. It's a very costly project, and it's been escalating in cost. Right now, it's about $1.6 billion. It's with a B, $billion for a 1.7 mile extension. So that's a lot of money for not a lot of a new rail. But it's an expensive project for a couple of reasons. One, San Francisco's already built out, and it's going to be tunneling under the city, so they have to have the board go through there. They have to try not to have anything happening to the existing buildings. They've got to go by the BART stations and by the existing Muni rail stations underground. So it's a very complicated engineering feat. They have to dig down pretty deep. But what it will bring is the light rail from the Caltrain station at 4th and King Streets, bring it towards near Union Square, bring it near the Moscone Convention Center, then bring it into Chinatown. It really will be a well used by tens of thousands of people a day. Whether that's enough to substantiate the cost, that's still a debate that's raging in San Francisco.
Will it be linked into BART and other Muni Transit?
If you walk a little bit, it will be.
But it's not direct.
Yeah, I mean, that's been really interesting to watch how they play. The city officials who are pushing this, and that's all the way from kind of the district supervisor who represents Chinatown to the mayor to Nancy Pelosi, Dianne Feinstein have been very big backers of it. They say it's not as inconvenient as it might look on paper, that you might only take an extra 5 minutes to walk to get to the BART station or to the other Muni lines.
This project has been driven by, though, a very well-known person in Chinatown over all of these years, and consistently there. Talk about Rose Pak.
Right, so Rose Pak is really one of the key power players in Chinatown. She can make or break politicians, it seems. She's been around for years and years, allied with any mayor that's been mayor in San Francisco. No one wants to cross her, strong ally of Nancy Pelosi and others. And she made this her mission to get this project built. In fact, she was out at that utility groundbreaking as well with her shovel and her hard hat. This was a moment for her. Now, this project is not a done deal whatsoever. The city is still waiting for close to $1 billion, $950 million or so from the federal government. But where the city has a leg up is the federal government keeps putting more money into it, and because it's gone this far, they've signed off on so many different parts of it, it would be extremely unusual. No one's ever seen it happen before where this money wouldn't be forthcoming. So the next step, we have the utility movement starting already. They hope to have this project really getting under the way in the next year or two, and then finally open for service in 2018.
Maybe it's a naive question, but are there risks in tunneling in so many places under a city that sits on I
would assume, of course, there are risks, but there have been a lot of engineers doing their work on this. I think it's the last thing that people want to see happen is anything dangerous. But even Mayor Newsom said this week, we certainly don't want another big dig, referring to the kind of problematic project is a nice way to say it in Boston. But we have to talk a little bit about the economic development, and this is really the second phase of a subway extension in San Francisco. The first phase brought subway service, or light rail service really, into the Bayview Hunters Point area, the southeast portion of the city. The T3rd runs down 3rd Street. It goes all the way out to Visitation Valley, which is near the Daly City border. If you want to see how light rail, how transit might affect economic development, just go down 3rd Street and you are seeing new cafes opening up, new housing being built. So it does make a difference.
There's also a new building going up in this same area that's controversial.
Right, not too far, right next to the Transamerica building. We say people hated that building, remember when it was first built? But this is a proposal to build a large high-rise condo tower right next to the Transamerica Pyramid, kind of between the financial district and the historic Jackson Square district. big fights at City Hall about it. Is it going to undo years of land use plans, or is it something new for the future?
Tunneling and building in and around Chinatown. Well, my thanks to all of you for joining us here tonight. And now for some other stories in the news this week. California farmers were denied an emergency request to suspend water pumping restrictions in the Delta. A federal judge reinstated a ban he temporarily lifted last week, but biologists found that the threatened Delta smelt were being harmed by the pumps. Central Valley farmers say the water limits of the last 2 years have caused millions of dollars in crop losses and layoffs of thousands of farm workers. Even in the face of a $1.3 million shortfall over the next 2 years, the San Francisco School Board okayed spending $120,000 a year on instruction and services related to LGBT issues. Well, the resolution calls for a district staff position to help support gay, lesbian, bisexual, and transgender students. Officials say these students are more likely to be harassed or bullied. And it's not too late. The deadline has been extended to apply for the Citizens Redistricting Commission. It will help redraw the state's legislative district lines. The new deadline is 5 p.m. on Tuesday, February 16th. The state has received about 20,000 applications so far, but critics worry that the commission won't have enough diversity. And that's all for tonight. Visit our website at kqed.org/thisweek for the question of the week. Do you think the recent health insurance increases will affect public support for health care reform? You can also watch complete episodes and segments, subscribe to the newsletter and podcasts, and comment on the show. And we want to say Gung Hei Fat Choi to everyone out there. I'm Belva Davis. Good night.